Welcome, everyone, to Blue Collar Startup, the podcast where hard work meets big ideas. This is your home for real talk, real stories, and real strategies from the front lines of life in the business of the trades. I'm one of your hosts, Mike Nelson from Five Towers Media.
And I'm the co-host, Derek Foster of Daigle Cleaning Systems. How we doing, Mike?
I'm doing well, sir. I'm doing well. How about yourself?
Good, man.
Yeah.
We're fully in the fall here and ended up with rain after a few weeks of drought, so it's a bit of an adjustment, but making the most of it.
Yeah. It's interesting because I was complaining about the fact that we were in a drought and weren't getting any rain. And then, so of course, yesterday it starts pouring rain, and I had to basically doing this big chicken run thing for my chickens, and I'm behind on it, and I got to do it before I go out of town. And so last night, pouring rain, 9 o'clock, just soaked and wet and cold, and the rain's coming off the roof and just slamming into me as I'm trying to put up chicken wire and all this other stuff. So I was wishing for the rain, and it came. So I guess I can't complain, but I did not enjoy it. I did not enjoy it.
You'll have to post some pictures up of the Coop build.
No, I'll get torn apart by people that watch this show if I show what I did out there. It's farm and barn construction, completely different than what we would say is good construction. So it's
Well,
and
maybe Brad can give you some pointers.
I need them. Well, and it's built for speed right now. I was just basically doing the bare minimum so that I could get the chickens out of the coop and into this area. So it's I'm gonna have to go back in actually and put in some more framing after the fact, but it's gonna hold. It probably wouldn't withstand a hurricane, but it'll hold for now until I get back to it. But
Well, Brad will come up and build it out a block for you. He'll put some
yeah,
blocks
yeah.
on
Well,
the inside.
geez. It reminds me of Three Little Pigs, right? Mine would
That's
mine
right.
would be made out of straw, man. That thing's any huffing and puffing's gonna blow that house down. So Brad's back on the show. Before we introduce Brad, though, let me just real quick do a quick shout out to our sponsors. These are the folks that hand us money so that we can then redistribute that money to different people. And typically, it's going to be kids at either HVCC, the Blue Collar College, or at the BOCES programs here locally, and helping kids with tuition and tools. So big shout out to People's, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Michael's Group. Of course, big shout out to Scott and Stacy over at Catamount Construction. I'm sorry, Construction, Catamount Consulting. Uh, and then, of course, Derek's team at Daigle Cleaning Services for all the things that they do, and our team over at Five Towers Media for all the work they do to help get this podcast out the door. And without further ado, Brad Lewis back on the show.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
it's awesome to have you back on.
I was actually I listened. So Brad, if you're listening and you haven't heard Brad's show before, it is a really good episode. I think Brad's got a great story. Episode 22. Actually went back and listened to some of it to kind of get, so I was somewhat prepared for this. And plus I had to remember what your mile time was, Brad, back in high school. So,
Too fast.
I ate too fast. I was thinking about the show. I'm like, oh, I can call him Mr. 420. But then I was like, but nowadays people
Yeah.
might get the wrong idea from that. So we say 420. That was his mile time in cross country in high school. Not anything to do with anything else. So we just want to make sure that's perfectly clear. But good to see you.
Yesterday, Boston announced the people that their cutoff time for the people, and of course, I made it. This will be I think it's 13th Boston, 7 years in a row. So, yeah, I'll
Wow.
be running in 2026. So,
Yeah. Yeah. I
Exciting.
think when we last interviewed you, I think you were about to do number 11.
yeah.
I think
So,
that tracks. That tracks.
yeah.
That's awesome. How'd you do last year?
Actually, I felt really great last year. The weather it wasn't cold, it wasn't hot, and I just, when you're running Boston, when you get to Heartbreak Hill, it's called. It breaks some people's heart when they're not prepared. But as soon as I got over Heartbreak Hill, I knew I was going to be able to coast it right in and feel great at the end.
Yeah.
And so I felt great. I did fine. I think I was almost an even split for the first half to the second half. And that's a lot of people blow up, their hearts get
Yeah.
broken.
Yeah.
When
How did you? Oh,
when
go
do you
ahead.
start training for that, Brad?
I actually pretty much don't stop.
Yeah.
I'm, it's like 40 to 60 miles a week year round. I might take a couple weeks off after a marathon or something like that, but I always look forward to the turkey
Wow.
trot in Troy. I love my
Yeah, man.
hometown, so so
I'll race you this year. How's that?
that's right. There you go.
That's a bold challenge right there, D.
Yeah, there's no shot. That's why not gonna come close.
Brad, how do you stack up year to year to year? Do you, even though we're getting older, do you find yourself staying at the same kind of time? Are you getting slower? Are you getting faster?
With kids, everything added on about 10, 20 minutes to my marathon time.
Yeah,
And I'm nowhere near the PRs I used to be at. So it's just you have that choice, play with your kids or, do 2-a-day runs. And man, they're
yeah,
just so sweet when they say to you, Dad, come help build the blocks with me, or you're a builder, Dad, stuff like that. And so when my son tells me he wants to build with me, it's like, what am I supposed to say? I want to go for another 5 miles today.
yeah.
Rainy day like today, it's easy to sort of phone it in and just get some tasks done around the house instead of running. Now that I'm older, I'm not going to hit my PRs, so it's more of a slow pace for me like that.
Are you still working like 100-hour work weeks? I was
No.
when I was listening to those episodes, I was thinking about it, how you were going to school full time, running your own business, working at a pizza place, and it's just it's a lot of work, man. So you're kind of slowing down a little bit, or
Yeah, and because of the audience that we have on this show, it's one of those things. My story was as soon as I graduated, it was continue to be in the trades or go work in the world of finance. And I think I graduated, I made $70,000 just in my own business as a 20-year-old kid. And so at that point, I paid all my school debt off. And, a job off out of the gate with the master's in business was 30 or 40,000 back in '09.
yeah,
That, it was great for me to start off making that kind of money, saving up, buying houses, renting them out at this point. And so now I don't have to do that as much. And I choose not to because, of course, kids and other hobbies and interests in life. And so,
yeah, that's nice. So you worked hard when you were young. Now you're starting to enjoy yourself as we're aging on here.
yeah, I think so. I think we're at a level, me and my wife are at a level where we can sort of rest a little bit more and relax, be engaged in the kids' events and stuff, coach Little League.
Yeah, that's awesome. So I know when we were emailing back and forth, it sounds like you've made some changes. You got some other things going on. Uh,
Mm.
so what kind of give us the scoop? What are you up to?
Yeah, sure. COVID was hard. I'm sure it was hard for a lot of business owners and stuff like that, but it was also great with PPP loans that they just forgave and they printed fake money and seemed to just put it in everybody's bank account. It was awesome. I mean, in that time, all the guys that worked for me wanted more out of life. They wanted to not do lawns and that, and they said they want to do patios. So I pivoted my company hard, new logo, new website, everything, just to feed their desire of what these guys were telling me they wanted. Of
Mhm.
course, I had a couple of guys that were happy and just to show up, go to work, and go home at the end of the day. Um, so I put all that effort into patios, and of course, I also sensed a little bit of the industry after everybody gets a patio and a backyard pool during COVID. How many more patios and pools are there going to be when interest rates are 7 or 8% like they've been lately for
Mhm.
HELOCs and stuff like that? So, I doubled down during COVID, bought as many houses that I could find foreclosed, fixed them up, and um, and with the patios and stuff, I did sense a little slowdown. Some of my guys were getting frustrated because it was asking them to grow in a hard way, to spot some of the technical things, the artistic things, like when you're laying out a patio, it needs to be square, straight. Otherwise, the client just sort of looks at it like they're getting a little frustrated. Some of those guys, I had one guy go to the union, another guy wanted to be an auto mechanic and that sort of stuff. So I kind of at that point said it's either me doing this, which I didn't want to do, or just shut down that part of the business because I raised grew up probably like 200 different guys over the years in the industries. People start their own business and that stuff. That's the number of people on the payroll. So at that
Yeah,
point, me and my wife, we have 24 apartments right now. So units or doors is what people say. And a lot of it's through sweat equity. So we really I don't have to go out there and lay pavers every day. There came an opportunity in the city of Troy. There's a land bank in the city of Troy. There's like 31 land banks throughout the state, I think it is. and a land bank gets state money and has the ability to deal with vacant buildings, something I've done, for the last 15 years. I interviewed for a part-time job as the executive director, and honestly, it's been great for the last year and a half. I've been just, 20 hours a week, go in and, right the ship. And we have a project manager, Paul. We execute the state grants, and we, hire contractors to fix up the buildings, and then either resell them, or we're going to be keeping a couple of them at the land bank. I guess it fits my model to bring in that passive income through rentals. But yeah, so I'm now the executive director of the land bank in Troy, and I'd say that having a background in the trades has been awesome for being able to speak the language, relate to the contractors, and understand what they need out of it. And so it's fulfilling at the same time of, maybe not hurting my body as much as I could if I wanted to sit there and lay pavers all day. But yeah.
Yeah. So are you completely out of the lawn and masonry business at this point?
The answer is no, and I've told a lot of people that I'm not taking any new clients. So that's my thing, is I'm not taking any new clients. My website's the worst website you'd ever see. It basically says, "Don't bother me, don't contact me," and I don't mean it to be rude, but at any moment it's an asset. I can turn it on and change the content to say, contact us if I really wanted to get back into it. But I have a group of 4 employees right now. They handle still about 200 lawns. The other, two of them handle the 200, and then the other two, they handle like people's shrubs. I mean, we do a lot of work with Emma Willard with, all their outside of the gate stuff. The inside of the gate, they handle themselves. But, we do a lot with the KIP schools, is Troy Prep. And we handle a lot of Troy Savings Bank, Music Hall. So we do a lot locally that we still manage and I maintain. It's nice, but it's just whatever my guys want to do at this point. I told them, if you want to retire and go do something else, I'm not gonna like push to find somebody in your place. I'll just be done with it. So,
Gotcha.
it's a grieving process, but it's where I'm at.
Yeah, well, because again, and if you guys didn't hear the episode 22, you started that business in high school, 15,
Yes. Mm-hmm.
and you're what
Yeah,
now? Are
almost
you
out of necessity, really. Yeah.
are you mid 40s, early 40s, late 30s?
38 right now. Going 39 next month. So
39. Okay. So that's, I mean, that's what's the math? 20 plus year run doing something.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
but that's also kind of the dream though, right? Like, most of us, I think entrepreneurs in general, right? At some point in time, we have this dream, we're going to start a business, we're going to build a business, and then either A, it's going to run itself, which it sounds like yours is kind of just operating with minimal involvement, hopefully from you, right? And then, or you sell it and you do something else.
Yeah.
So
And
you live.
the sales part's interesting right now. I'll tell you this, given our audience on this, your audience on this podcast, I with the land bank's attorney, her name's Michelle. We were talking before the last board meeting, and she said to me, she goes, all these mergers and acquisitions that I see through her law firm, everybody's buying service businesses right now, and they're lumping them together through private equity. And it's
Yeah.
like interesting, you get this reoccurring revenue. I mean, I know Derek has Dago Cleaning. These are the same clients every week, every month. I don't know, and you're not having to sell so much as you're trying to maintain that level of service, but the money is almost guaranteed.
Yeah. Yeah. And last week, our last episode, we had Cameron Carson from Ambassador on the show talking about franchising, and he was talking about too, like home services, right? Like that is what everybody's looking for in the franchise world. Like people buying franchises want to buy a home services franchise right now. So maybe you should
Mhm.
talk to Carson, maybe, or to Cameron, and franchise your business, man. We got a link for you.
Yeah, yeah, send it over.
So, so let's get into land bank a little bit more. So it's a nonprofit from the sounds of things,
Right. Mhm. It's a
and
nonprofit government public authority.
government public authority. I don't know what that is, but it sounds like something. Uh, so
Right, right.
how does it operate, Brad? Like what's the mission behind
Mhm.
land bank?
Yeah, so land banks were enacted like over 10 years ago as a state legislation to allow them to be a thing, so to speak. I tell you it's a public authority and you're like, I'm not sure what that is. Think of it like this. MTA in New York City, it's a mass transit authority, is a public authority. So is the Albany County Airport, things like LDCs and IDAs are public authority locally in the cities. The land bank is a public authority for whatever foreclosing governmental unit that it's in. And ours is in the city of Troy. So we operate within the bounds of the city of Troy. When they foreclose on people's property or there's property that's vacant, abandoned, tax delinquent, we can come in, take ownership of it, and the state will give us money to sort of save the buildings. And that's an interesting thing. Some people might just say demolish the buildings, which then the city has to absorb the cost of a demolished building and I look at it from a bigger picture. All the work that the person did who built the building is forfeited. So our guys that are out there laying bricks 100 years ago, that building, they just level it because it's blighted a little bit and it just needs a little stabilization. Cities themselves can't fix private buildings. They can only demolish or resell them to people. But they can create a land bank like the city of Troy, and we can come in and use money from the city, from the state, from wherever, and fix the buildings up, maybe to a bare minimum where they're investable again, or to a level where people can move in and be move-in ready for people to live there, homeowners.
It's interesting. So what does the process look like for you once you've acquired a piece of property, right? It's been foreclosed on, it's been, the land bank takes over. What does it look like for you to go in, assess, hire? Like, tell us about that process.
Yeah, we're working on that right now with one of our projects on River Street. It's been great. Um, we probably got $500,000 we're investing in this building, and a lot of it's $10,000 to $20,000 contracts. A lot of small contractors are able to come in, change out the windows, change out the doors. I listen to some other land bank executive directors, and they talk a lot about like we need to find software to tell us what's wrong with the building. Honestly, where we come from, we can walk in and say, those windows need to be changed. The foundation's broken. The roof is leaking. You need a new roof. So we kind of do a self-assessment, being that me and Paul's the project manager. Me and Paul are both from the trades. You can kind of tell when you walk in a building what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done, self-assess. And then there's some work with environmentals that we have to do, the paper pushing part of it. But after that, we get to entertain quotes from the contractors. If at certain levels of dollars, procurement levels, then we have to go ahead and get the board to approve, or I can approve unilaterally at low numbers. But over like 20,000, 15,000, 10,000, those numbers, the board has to approve those quotes. And so then they approve it, and then we monitor the contractors working. So it's been really, really exciting. This fall, we're going to spend $1.1 million on 3 buildings in the city of Troy.
Wow. And that's all money that's going back
Yeah.
locally to local contractors and getting funneled back into the community, it sounds.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yep. All these, we did have last fall, we had put out an RFP for roofs, and these guys from Staten Island responded and came up and did 3 roofs in Troy for us. So, there's I think guys that are doing contracting, small contractors, could probably look to some of these RFPs and these land banks and just say, is there any work coming up? Because the land banks have a lot of money from the state and they're looking for contractors, that's for sure.
So once the building is brought back to whatever level of integrity, we'll say that you're bringing it to, what happens to the buildings then?
Right. Yeah. So I think there's like 2 levels of that. One is making it investable for somebody to take the baton and buy it and fix it up themselves. That's getting the red X off of it. That's fixing the facade of it so it doesn't look like the neighbors aren't proud of their own neighborhood. If you see a blighted house on your street versus one that the front looks good even though nobody lives there, it can change your self-esteem to your neighborhood. That's the bare minimum level I'd like to see buildings fixed up to. The best would be getting them to the finish line. But of course, if we could just finish every building to a habitable structure, then of course, that's a lot of money that the
Yeah.
state would have to give us. They only give you so much at a time that you got to get done. So those are the 2 levels I see. From there, the land bank can either sell it to somebody owner occupied usually. If it's a fixer upper, they might sell it to a developer that would fix and hold it. Or
Mhm.
if somebody wanted to fix and flip, they could do that too if it's a project that works for the board just decides all that stuff. But I'd like to see them get fixed up all the way to the end so that way we can get homeowners in there and that way we can help contractors make money and the money being flowed right back to our city instead of, not used up at all.
Yeah. When you're So you mentioned one of the projects you're going to put $500,000 into one
Yeah.
building. When you're done doing whatever that $500,000 gets you to, and let's just say you sell it to someone else, is their basis? I mean, is it a $500,000 purchase for them, or is it just based off the value of the business, regardless if it's covering what you guys spent on it? How does that all work?
Right. So now you're hitting on the whole key word that some people say the land bank is set up to lose money. And
Right.
really, we're not set up to lose money, but the alternative on a lot of these buildings are that the cities themselves have to sort of hold on to the building and deal with the blighted structure. Sometimes the demolitions are 50 to $100,000 depending on how technical, how much materials there. I mean, I think the Haskell School was a school in Troy, and I'm sure the demolition was, at least a couple $100,000 because of how big the school was. So the city is starting at a negative 50 to 100,000 on the building. And then the
Hmm.
state comes in and says, we want housing and we're willing to give you the money to make the housing. So the state gives us the money to fix it. Then when we sell it, we actually keep all the money we sell it for. So the land bank is using state money to fix it and then keeping all the money when they sell it. So there's actually only profit that they're making from that scale. But from a taxpayer dollar perspective, we are losing money, but creating housing and creating opportunities for people to buy houses. So we sell
Yeah,
them for what the market is. We don't have to recapture all the money that we put into it.
gotcha. Well, and I asked because I'm just like, if you're an investor and those buildings are coming up and they just had $500,000 put into them and you can buy it for 300 or whatever it is, like sounds like a pretty good deal. So
It,
like,
it is, and you're getting into something that's interesting about rehabbing buildings. Obviously I've done it privately. When
yeah.
the land bank goes for quotes, I have to get quotes from contractors that are getting profit all along the way.
Hmm.
Nobody's going to come reside a building unless they're going to make profit doing it. That's just the
Yep.
way the world works. There's no incentive for them to want to do it. But if I bought the building myself and I was working with my crew or crew of guys to fix it, the profit I get is the sweat equity I get. So when it comes to somebody, an investor looking at something, they could say, I could buy it and fix it for say 300,000, or the land bank could spend 450,000 because we have to engage contractors every step of the way. The insurances are quite abusive. You got to make sure everybody's covered, including
Yeah.
everybody's kids and their grandmothers and that sort of stuff. But it's important. And so because of the bureaucracy, it increases the cost that sometimes the government, the government costs are higher because of that. And it's just the
Yeah.
way it works. But small developers, they could buy a building and put the sweat equity into it. At the end of it, it's a lot less. I mean, I've done a two-family building for under $100,000 where I replaced the whole foundation, not the whole, I found one of the four foundation walls and redid all the siding, new furnaces, everything brand new, under 100,000, including the roof. But you get a two-family with the land bank, I'm seeing the quotes come back at 300,000 for a developer to fix the whole thing. So did I make 200,000 when I fixed that two-family building? Maybe. That's what
Right.
I got with sweat equity. But from the government's perspective, the state and the city, the goal is to get these buildings back under productive use instead of having blight.
Yeah. Which, I mean, that makes sense, right? Like we need housing, and obviously you want streets and neighborhoods looking as good as they can possibly be, so that you have good people in your neighborhoods, and like you said, there's a pride of ownership there.
Mhm.
I definitely don't think it's a negative thing that maybe the government is going to spend $500,000 and there's a a deficit there when you go to resell it. It sounds to me just like there's opportunity. And from an investment standpoint, if I'm an investor and able to take advantage of something like that, like you'd think people would be scooping those things up once you guys are done with them, right? Like,
Yeah, I get calls daily, probably 20 minutes a day.
yeah,
I'm on the phone explaining the process to people that are asking me what's coming up, what's the new opportunities to buy buildings. And yeah, so people are very interested. People understand that there's opportunities in it.
yeah. Well, and plus, I mean, you look at the cost of housing right now in the United States, pretty much everywhere you go, right? Like it's not that affordable. And it sounds like these are some affordable options for people to be able to find, whether it still needs a
Mhm.
little bit of work or doesn't. But
Right, right. Yeah, no, and obviously the land bank has the ability to pick a target and pick targets maybe that are underserved. In Troy, I mean, that's where I'm from. And that's where the land bank is. I live on the east side of Troy, right near, like I mentioned Emma Willard before. On my block, if a building was vacant, somebody would pay 50, $100,000 just have the opportunity to fix a building in this neighborhood. But
Mhm.
if you go in South Troy, North Central, some parts of Lansingburg, people might not want to buy a building there, even if you could give it to them for $5,000, depending on the condition of it.
Yeah,
They're just not certain. The upside's not the same. I mean, one of the houses down the street from where I live sold for 700,000 earlier this year, and another one 500,000. But down in North Central, we're hoping to get 250,000 for a brand new two-family when we fix it up.
yeah,
So it just tells you there's a disparity. And so our goal in the land bank, obviously, is to fix up the buildings that maybe wouldn't get the same love that the private market can kind of do on its own.
yeah, absolutely.
Brad, you touched on it the last time you were on, and to Mike's point, there's a lot of opportunity, not only for our listeners, but for people interested in handy, throughout the capital region. How did Because I think what you did was pretty interesting in the winter, because your business was somewhat seasonal.
Mhm.
You would transition, and keep your guys busy with these projects. Can you talk a little bit about that again, just to kind of tell the story of how you made that possible for
Yeah,
yourself?
for sure. For sure. And in fact, I'm doing it again this year. I mean, just because I took a part-time job in the land bank doesn't mean I'm not still doing things privately to develop. Me and my wife are under contract for a three-family down the street from our house, and we're probably going to close next week. And I have
Congrats.
offers out on a four-family in South Troy, and so we might onboard 7 more units this year, this winter and stuff. But the for me, I as a land bank executive director, I'm disqualified from buying anything from the city and buying anything from the land bank. I have a conflict of interest. So now at this point, in order for me to buy something from the city, they have to have a law committee, and I don't think they've had one of those in 3 or 4 years. A law committee meeting in the city council, so they'd have to call a special meeting just for me. So I'm probably not going to stir the pot to make them do that. But it, all along the way, unemployment's always been a hard thing for employees to deal with from my business, from my small contracting business. And you get these guys used to not going to work, and then you call them back at the beginning of the season. If they have found another opportunity, you lost all that institutional knowledge for your guys. So my theory all along the way was bring in, give them some work to do, so that way, you know, they are just on this habitual show up to work every day, work, go home, same paycheck, steady their lives. I'll invest in them in the wintertime, and I'll pay for it with the work that we do in the summertime. Rinse and repeat every year till now we have these units of housing. But there's still opportunity for people. The county, of Rensselaer County does a county auction with Collar City Auctions. The city of Troy is going to be doing a live auction, I think is the way they're going to go now. There was a new Supreme Court ruling that made it so that the government can't take the surplus of the value of your building when they foreclose on you. In the past, they could foreclose on you if you owed $10,000 and then sell it for whatever they want. But now they have to get fair market value and give you the difference between what they're owed and what they sold, or what they're owed and the value is. called the surplus. So now you're not going to see the same thing where I was buying buildings for $100, $5,000, $500. I call it the good times because if you can get that kind of work and all you got to do is start gutting it and get a set of plans and you're back to work, it's great. But I still think there's going to be a public auction. If you get $10,000, $20,000, you might be able to scoop up one of these foreclosures from the city. And then at that point, you're just working on it. In between whatever jobs you can find, because the wintertime is slow for our industry, all industries really. I mean, maybe not HVAC. That's probably a great industry for the wintertime, but certainly if you're going to cut grass, wintertime's not the best. You better pick up plowing, and even that's only 8 times a winter, 10 times a winter. So you got 3 months and you're working 10 days. It's nice to have a project where you're going there and you're working and using what you know from there, your trade to try to make some sweat equity.
Brad, I got to call you out on something here. I was saying before, when you were in college, you're a full-time student, running your business, working at it, delivering pizzas. So you had 3 jobs basically. And it doesn't sound like you're slowing down, man, because you got the property manager, you got the rentals you're doing, you got the executive director, and you're still running your business. So you're still a pretty busy guy, man. And finding time
Yeah.
for the kids
And
and
then,
coaching.
the other thing,
What's that?
exactly. Little League. I said exactly, Little League.
Little
Yeah.
League. That's a part-time job in and of itself, man. I used to coach my kids when
Yeah.
they were younger. We're
Yeah,
getting a
the
little less.
springtime's good for that. It's nice to walk down to the baseball stadium.
Yeah. Yeah. I know we're getting close on time, but one thing I wanted to ask, I know, running a non-for-profit is very similar to running a business. You have all the same issues, you have all the same problems, revenue in, revenue out, employees, all that fun stuff. What do you think the biggest challenges that you're seeing right now?
Uh, for the challenge for the land bank specifically, or the economic arena that we're in, the macroeconomic arena,
Either one.
either one. I think the land bank, when I started at the land bank, we had $30,000 in the bank and we had an unfinished project. And when I walked in, I had thought that we had over $1 million because I saw in the newspaper that the land bank had $1 million grant from the state. It was 1.7. So I said, they've got to be chock full of money. So when I started, I got in, there was 30,000 in the bank. The hardest part about it is just with the land bank itself, the only money that you'll get to sort of stabilize the organization is through property sales. So you have to get to the finish line on some of your sales. And that's the only, and cash flow is the big thing. And that's going to be the narrative with most things. It's great if you can make money 50 years from now, but if you have no cash flow, you can't float your life, you can't float the organization and that sort of stuff. So we ended up selling one of our landmark projects, 791 River Street. It was a $400,000 building. We had 600 into it. I know you were asking that sort of question.
Yeah.
There was an old building there that was demolished, and then we ended up, doing a spec build. There was a couple of blunders that were made. I think the whole city knows about all of that, so I'm not throwing anybody under the bus. Everybody was wondering what's the land bank doing with 791 River Street. I took over, I finished it, we sold it, and it stabilized the organization by getting that cash into the bank account. Now we have some savings in case there's a tight period. But I think for nonprofits, this is, I'm on the board of a couple of them, and I help out in other ones. A lot of times they go out of their way instead of saving money or treating it like they can create a cash flow positive situation. Call cash flow positive profit. They go out of their way to say, now that we have a little money, let's spend it.
Mm-hmm.
We're supposed to be nonprofits, so therefore we should always struggle in this perpetual struggle situation where we just need to ask everybody for money because every time we get a little bit of it, it's all new office furniture or this new fax machine or whatever you want to you splurge on instead of stabilizing the organization first. And nonprofits can make money, but their goal is to execute their mission over making money. They still can
Mm-hmm.
make money. There's just, if they make it, they get to keep it there to stabilize the organization, keep fulfilling their mission. So I think one of the biggest things is I probably go with cash flow, and especially with nonprofits, especially with regular, businesses like Derek's or mine. If are operating with a large accounts receivable and you're not asking for people to pay your invoices, it's great. On the books might say on accrual basis you're making a ton of money, but you got to make sure you have that money hit your checking account and pay your bills. So
Yeah.
I'll go with that for
Well,
my answer.
and that's when you were talking, it made me think about, in your other episode we recorded with you, it sounds to me like you're a saver, right? Like you talked about it when you were younger, in your teens you were a saver, going into college you're a saver. So it really is kind of just a part of who you are, right? Is that
Mhm.
habit of saving. And like you said, cash flow, I mean, I think any small business especially, but it just it's a bigger problem for big businesses, right? Cash flow is always huge. And that's what I was going to ask you. What kind of advice would you give someone based around cash flow on how to have positive cash flow, not just a huge accounts receivable sitting there on paper?
Yeah, and by the way, Brad, your background is accounting. So
Yeah, yeah,
I want to preface
finance, yeah,
this.
yeah, yeah. So I mean, um, what advice would I give somebody about cash flow? I mean, even with the contractors at the land bank, lately I say to them, "Hey, give me that invoice. Don't wait 2 weeks to give me that invoice because there's still I need my treasurer to sign off on that check. I can't write that check without her signature on it. I need to put in for reimbursement for the money to the state, so that money has to hit my account. You're talking about a lag." And it's just keeping up with that sort of invoicing. I invoice regularly in my personal business once a month, but some guys, it's better if they do it weekly. It just works for them that way. For me, I think it's a nuance to my business, but it's like asking the client to pay every week is kind of difficult for the client because now you're not saving them time. And so once a month's a little easier. But trying to get those invoices out and doing your bookwork. I mean, we're good with the hammer. Are we good with making sure that we get paid for using that hammer? It's great that people owe you, but once they forget for a while, they can truthfully, how many contractors get stiff because the people just feel like they haven't paid this long, they can just not pay for a while. It
Yeah.
happens. I'm sorry, but it's a tough situation. So just making sure you get your money. But then I hear all the time, like even on Facebook Reels and stuff like that, people talk about life hacks. Like I can write off a Porsche because it's over 6,000 pounds and you can get a Section 179 depreciation. So that's all the rich people are buying Porsches. It's like, do you need a Porsche? You can just have a Chevy 2500 from 2012 and just wait on the Porsche until you have a good bank account stabilized. But a lot of them will take on those payments because they heard it's a good tax strategy. And
Mhm.
sometimes I'd rather give the government their 30% taxes than to pay 100% on an item that I don't need right now or I don't need ever. So.
Love it.
One more question, Mike. If Brad, if you have a couple seconds here. So let me ask you a question. What are your criteria when it comes to actually picking an investment that you are going to spend on? What does that look like for you?
Hmm. And are we talking houses?
Sure. Yeah.
So I think you have to I mean, I like what people are doing now. I'll start by saying I typically don't I haven't spent a lot of money on a house. The most expensive thing I've ever bought in my life was the first house I bought. It was $85,000. And right now, me and my wife, we have 14 houses. We're about to buy our 15th. So I've never spent more than 85, and that was the first one I bought. So usually there's so much room that it's a slam dunk no matter what. This one we're buying, a three family, is $250,000. So this is going to really be a big jump for me. Uh, but when I backed out the math, I love one of my friends gave me this sort of way to back out to figure out if a house investment's worth it. A lot of times the banks will loan you 80% or 70% loan to value. So say you have a $400,000 house, they'll give you 80% loan to value, meaning they'll give you a loan of $320,000 on that loan. If he can add in all of his sweat equity and repairs and make it all worth 320 and he can take his money back out, he's fulfilling what I like to call and a lot of people use it called the Burr method. Rehab, rent it out, then refinance. And you can pull your money that you put into it, your 80%, you could pull back out with a loan from the bank and let the rental income satisfy the debt for a long time. So if you can get to that 80% number and a basis on a rehab project, then your 20% equity that you have is just your net worth for a while. So I like that. I like to back it out that way. I like the way he did that. Usually I don't have to. Like I said, 85,000 was the most, and that was a long time ago. I bought that first house, and I was happy with that number. But at $100, when you buy a house for $100, the math is just get to work, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Get to
I
work.
appreciate that. It's good insight.
That's awesome, Brad. Brad, if people want to learn more about what you're doing with the land bank, where do they find that information?
I mean, I say I'm having a lot of fun posting on Facebook with the Troy Community Land Banks page. Of course, you know, I'm kind of low key with the socials and that sort of stuff. You know, I'll add people if they want to add me on Facebook, but you know, it's just a picture of me. They can look up Brad Lewis, you know. So, but either way, you know.
No, I was just saying, thanks for coming on the show again, Brad. It's great to see you. Great to catch up and hear about what you're up to, and this new chapter that you're exploring sounds pretty amazing.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
And thanks, of course, everybody for listening. You can find us if you haven't found us yet. You can find us on Spotify, Apple, Rumble, and YouTube. Make sure to hit the like and subscribe. We're coming up on our 100th episode right now, which we're pretty excited about. We've got a pretty good guest, we think, coming on for our 100th episode. We won't say who it is just yet, but once that invite's on the calendar, maybe we will. But appreciate everybody for listening, and you'll hear from us next week.
And that wraps up another episode of Blue Collar Startup. A big thank you to our sponsors, 5 Towers Media, Daigle Cleaning Systems, Daigle Fire Solutions, The Michaels Group, Martin Electric, MLB Construction, Bonaccio Construction, Peoplease, and Catamount Consulting for making this podcast possible. And thank you for tuning in. If you learned something or felt inspired, connect with us on our website at bluecollarstartup.io or email us at hardhat.bcsu@gmail.com. We'd love to hear your questions and topic ideas. Help us spread the word by sharing the show and following us on social media for updates. Until next time, keep on building, keep on dreaming, and keep hustling like your future depends on it.